Google Cloud is growing in market share as companies increasingly adopt multi-cloud strategies. Google Cloud was once again named a leader in the 2021 Gartner Infrastructure as a Service Magic Quadrant, and it is important to note, demand for people with Google Cloud skills is running higher than ever. According to Global Knowledge's survey for 2020, a GCP Cloud Data Architect had the highest salary at $171,749 annually. Getting Google Cloud certified or even just learning more can add value to your career earnings. The following course path will guide you along as you build your Google Cloud skills. With each course, you will prepare further to succeed in successfully obtaining the associated certification and/or to apply the critical skills you will need to succeed in the enterprise. Once you complete this comprehensive learning path here on Tech Commanders, you will truly be prepared to take your place amongst the Google Cloud experts in your field. Let's get enabled on the Google Cloud platform. What are you waiting for?
Okay, all right. So what I'd like to do first is go around the room and do introductions. So I'll start off and then I'll start basically from my screen left to right. We'll start with Kwesi next. But first, Joe Holbrook here. I'm the CLO of Tech Commanders. I also run the Google Cloud Meetup. I've been working with Google Cloud since Google Cloud was Google Cloud. I was on one of the original content teams for Google Cloud with Global Knowledge. That was about probably 7 years ago, maybe now, 6 years ago. And then before that, I was working with the App Engine, which was actually around since AWS released S3. A lot of people don't realize that. But so anyways, so that's my story. I'm based here in Jacksonville. And before that, I was based in DC as well. And let me just check the chat. Great. Okay. Looks like a couple folks. Michael's familiar as well. Okay. Great. Great. Okay. Awesome. AWS as well. Great. Excellent. All right. Let me share my screen here before I forget. Let me go ahead and share that. Where is screen 3? There it is. Okay. All right, so for today, I have a PowerPoint presentation, but the goal is I don't want to go through the PowerPoint per se, like, slide by side. The goal of the meetup here was to get to know Google Cloud. There's a full course that you have available. I'm also going to provide access to Tech Commanders for the Google Cloud courses. For those that are interested, I'll give you the link for that. Before we go as well. So, if you want to become the Google Cloud engineer, digital leader, you want to learn about Google Cloud FinOps, you want to learn about App Engine or DevOps, I've got probably about every course you could think of on Google Cloud per se. And I've got another 3 that I'm getting ready to release. I've got a partner that I'm working with that is working on one as well. So we're trying to get those up and running. There's a lot of changes in Google Cloud as well. But again, the goal today is, not to go through PowerPoints and all that, but I will go through a few things and, talk about some of the areas that might come up. But I'd like to hear as well, when I go around the room here, I'm going to start off with Kwesi here. And if you could just let us know where you're from, how long you've been working with cloud or whatever, or if you haven't, if you're new, what you want to hope to get out of this meetup today. And then and if there's any other types of meetups around cloud that you'd like to have, let me know. I am looking for some speakers to talk about, for example, FinOps and also some other areas like AI, which is one area that I refuse to get into. I just don't enjoy AI or ML, but so I'm trying to get some of that content ready as well. But that's just me. So with that said, let's start off with Kwesi. How are you, sir?
Doing good. Gonna keep it brief. Thank you for having me, Joseph. Quasi from Tampa, Florida.
Tampa.
Recent coding bootcamp graduate. Just got done doing a 2-day blockchain workshop where was able to put something on OpenSea. So I was real excited about that.
Great.
Really excited about running into you again, Mr. Holbrook. I want to connect with you somehow because I know you're doing some things with blockchain. Don't know anything about cloud. Really interested about learning this and what you have to offer.
Great. Well, appreciate it. Yeah, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I do make it down Tampa once in a while as well. I have some family down that way, but yeah, I'll send you my LinkedIn connect as well if you like. So appreciate that. Great. All right, Michael, how are you?
Hey, doing all right. Thanks. Thanks for providing this meetup. So
Yes.
I've got a fair bit of experience on AWS. I was managing a few years ago at a pharma company, genomics processing. And so we deployed into AWS on a regular basis. And so managing the account and deploying product in there. I now work at a scientific software company, and we have a client that wants to put our software onto Google Cloud. So my biggest concern, I guess, is I understand the AWS terms and concepts and paradigms, and I'm looking for the translation into Google Cloud so that I have some semblance of we'll say, so I guess just to be able to understand that I'm talking about the same thing. So whether it's object storage or virtual private cloud or ephemeral storage on an instance, stuff like that, what the comparables are, and any, gaps, like, okay, what's missing from Google Cloud that AWS makes life so easy to do that I need to worry about, that sort of thing.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So my advice, if you're going to migrate, is that you want to get paid by the hour. So
Well, I'm already a salaried employee at this software company.
I'm
so
sorry. I'm just
that's
kidding.
not a problem.
Okay. No, I hope they pay well. No, there's actually, honestly, what is the language that you're going to be migrating, or languages? Do you know? I assume.
So we
Python, Golang. What is Java?
No. So we have a software product that deploys. The server will deploy on Linux or Windows. The client will deploy on Windows. And so we are being asked to deploy this product on a virtual machine environment, probably with clusters, basically an HPC equivalent in the cloud, in Google, running this product. So the product itself is immutable. There's no language associated with it. It's a compiled binary that just gets installed on a VM and understands grid engines. And so now it's just a matter of I know how to do it on AWS, and how do I translate that into Google Cloud in terms of the security, the identity access management, clustering, object storage, stuff like that.
Yes. Okay. Great. Yeah. Okay. I get it now. All right.
Because,
Excellent.
for example, this product that we have natively understands S3 buckets, but at this point, it does not natively understand any Google storage concept. So, and I'd have to figure out, okay, what do I have to do to translate that? Do I have to go just straight API and then write some code to do that instead? So,
okay. Yeah, makes sense. So unfortunately, S3, of course, isn't, nor is Google Cloud Storage Open API. That sometimes can make things a little easier. So it's all proprietary. And but anyways, to keep on topic here, I have some great ideas of what you're looking for. So I'll do my best in the hour and 15 minutes left to talk about it.
All right.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. And let's see. Next in line is Angeline. How are you?
Hey, so I'm really new to the cloud. I'm just interested in learning Google Cloud. I'm a GRC analyst currently, so I do want to get, pretty good at the Google environment.
Great. Okay. Great. And where you're located?
Texas.
Texas. Okay. Excellent. Thanks for joining. Scott, how are you?
Hello?
Yes. Hello,
yes,
how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, my name's Chris. Pretty new to the cloud. I don't have too much of a background. I'm a network engineer. I've been working as one for the last couple of years, and I just recently started learning AWS. So I don't know, I just joined just to get some more exposure to like terminology from the Google Cloud point of view. That's pretty much it.
Okay, perfect. And where you're located by chance? Did I miss that or?
Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, great. Okay, Jacksonville. Excellent. Welcome. All right, next. Looks like, okay, Michael is having mic issues. Mike's out of Boston. Okay. Boston is where I grew up in Billerica, where everybody hangs out at the Elks and goes to goes to the football game on the weekends, pretty much. But anyways, yeah, great. Thanks for joining, Michael. Okay, next in line is Zara. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you.
I'm a database administrator, new to Google Cloud, just wanted to learn terminology. I'm taking some courses on Cloud Academy and also on Google for AWS and Google Cloud. And like I said, I just want to learn about Google Cloud. I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, okay. Okay, welcome. Thanks for joining. And Mason, familiar name. How are you?
How are you?
Good to see you again.
For everyone else, I'm a recruiter here in Jacksonville. Zero actual cloud experience, but a lot of sort of stumbling my way through what I'm talking about. So just obviously continuous learning, trying to learn as much as possible just to be better at what I do. So that's why I'm here.
All right, excellent. Thanks. And there's a little feedback on the mic. I didn't know. I could translate it, but I think I got most of it. But in case anyone else was not having issues. Yeah. But yeah, no worries. So yeah, I don't know. Did you have another speaker somewhere on or the phone maybe?
I do not, but I'm going to see if I can plug these headphones in.
Well, that's better there. Yeah, I could hear you talking straight there, so that's good.
Any luck here? Can you hear me?
Much better. Yeah, much better.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no
but yeah,
worries.
I'm a recruiter here in Jacksonville. Just been seeing a lot of cloud opportunities lately, and I like to know what I'm talking about. So just want to learn as much as possible. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks, Mason, for joining. And one of these days we have to meet up and grab coffee or lunch. So, and also too, Mason's been posting some great jobs on LinkedIn as well. So for those that are not members of the Google Cloud Certified Professionals on LinkedIn, a lot of jobs going that way for cloud and developers as well. But anyway, so Mason's local and he's been posting some awesome content around jobs. So thanks for doing that, Mason, as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, and next would be Thaddeus. How are you? And again, doing my best to pronunciate it. Or Thad for short, maybe.
Yeah, both are correct.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
sorry for the background noise. I had to make a stop before going home.
Okay.
But I'm in Columbia, South Carolina, and basically, my agency is starting off with moving into the cloud. So we're doing Azure and AWS. And so when I started with AWS, somehow I guess the Google algorithm saw that, so it kind of pointed me towards GCP. And
Huh.
so I was like, well,
Okay.
since I'm jumping in the water, I might as well learn GCP too. So that's why I'm here.
Great, great. Okay. And as everybody, I guess matures in their experience with the cloud, you'll notice that even though the theory is the same at the top, once you get deeper into the weeds, things are vastly different. When you look at how you want to, again, compute VMs have a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences, and the data services are all over the map and all that as well. So great feedback and experience, it sounds like, as well. And did I miss anyone? It looks like there's one person, Latif. Did I get you, Latif? Don't believe I did.
No, I can give a
Okay.
quick background.
Great.
So I am working on some projects that require using Hyperledger, and so I was thinking of
Okay.
different ways of deploying that, and thought to get your
Okay.
thoughts on it.
Yeah, I have a little background in that. I get a book out on that as well. I'll post the link. It's from Wiley. I did it 2 years ago. So I was deploying Hyperledger on AWS quite a bit, actually. And I've got BAS courses out there as well. But anyways, yeah, Hyperledger Fabric, I assume, is what you're talking about. Is that correct? It's
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great blockchain, enterprise blockchain. It's funny because I tried to meet up on that like 6 months ago and no one registered. So it's like, really? So I don't know, that's weird. So I might try it again if that's of interest.
Yeah, it seems like a very powerful platform, and we were trying to
is.
build something on Solidity, and then the open
Yep.
chain just wasn't the right thing for the enterprise environment. So
Yeah.
Hyperledger, is there a native connection between GCP and Hyperledger?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
Unlike AWS and Azure, they have really solid, and IBM as well. It's a shame because IBM had a really good blockchain as a service. And I was teaching a lot of these courses on O'Reilly. And one thing that would come up with IBM is everybody loved the blockchain as a service because it was really straightforward and they had different levels of service, node deployments, basically. And it just wasn't making money, I guess. So they shut it down pretty much. So
when did they shut it down? Was it last year?
It was about last year. Yeah, it was an interesting. So they do have blockchain services, but it's not like, so for example, like when we have like cloud deployment, we have software as a service, platform as a service, and then infrastructure as a service. So there's still a lot of tools you can deploy it on infrastructure as a service. And they sort of dumbed down their platform as a service, but there's no more SaaS, basically. So they had a really solid blockchain as a service, but that's pretty much, the good old days, I guess. But AWS still does, but Google really doesn't have. There's some marketplace solutions. If we have time, I'll walk through that you could deploy. I do have a course, interestingly enough, on how to deploy blockchains on Google Cloud that is supposed to run March 1st, but I may need to reschedule because the attendance isn't that high again. Google Cloud and blockchain is sort of like oil and water, to be honest, but it works if you are creative enough to put together a little code, I guess, is the way to look at it.
Yeah. And then the other thing I was interested in was the Cloud Simple integration. I mean, we had some VMware projects that clients wanted to work on. Is that I guess Google now owns Cloud Simple, so So setting up VMware and going through the whole hypervisor, et cetera, and all those features is, I'm assuming, pretty easy.
Yeah, that's more robust. And I'll talk about VMware Engine. This is a managed service with Google for deploying VMware services, basically. Sort of similar to AWS, VMware on AWS as well. So it's comparable. It depends on what you're looking for. But okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Excellent. Excellent. So right on schedule. So what I want to do, I have sort of a hard stop about 7:30. So just to be aware. So what I like to do is talk about Google Cloud and just go through a few things. Before I get into the console, I'd like to touch on a few things here in the PowerPoint. And again, for those that might have joined or may not have downloaded the content, there is a course that is there. And this is the course right there. That's the PowerPoint. There's also recorded courses that I do have on our platform, of course. And again, this goes through basically, you know, a lot of the areas that you might want to learn when you're starting to get into a new cloud platform. So that's there. So that's free. Also, too, I will upload after we get off the call an ebook for those that are interested in becoming a cloud engineer or cloud architect. I just published an ebook on that as well. So there's a lot to learn here. So I think I covered that. And then let's see. And then again, on the meetups, the blockchain group, there is a meetup on Google Cloud, but it may be postponed till the week after to see if I get another few people to join it. So this one here, deploy blockchains on Google Cloud and cryptos. So I was going to talk about Hyperledger, and then I was also going to talk about deploying, for example, Ethereum nodes, as well as basically deploying a Bitcoin node as well. So for those that are interested. And then I do have blockchain fundamentals as well. And again, in the cloud meetups that are coming up, the Google Cloud ones, I did want to point out that, so that's tonight. Again, that's there. I am holding a cloud practitioner course in March. And then we do have cloud engineer courses as well coming up. So for those that are interested, but there will be a course coming up as well. Another Google Cloud. I'll wait to announce that until I confirm a date. So I just want to clarify that. Okay. So I think we're good. Let me go over here and bring up my screen here. Let me check the chat. I got a couple chats here. Let me see. Okay, great. Okay, didn't want to miss anything. All right. And can you see my screen okay? Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yep. Yeah, I can.
Okay, perfect. I just want to double check.
Yeah, if you could just go full screen on that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to double check. It's, oh, there it is. Okay, let me share my screen here. That does that again. Why does that do that?
Oh, it switches to the other screen. It puts the
yeah, I get
slideshow on the other screen.
Yeah, no
yeah,
worries.
there's an option, but yeah.
Yeah, I can just change the screen. It's no big deal. Yeah, I keep on forgetting how I set that. And the problem is that I bring the same computer to two different, you know, to the office and home, and I have two different basically hubs that I use, or you know, displays. So, but I got a new Dell laptop, so that problem will be solved here. These IBMs you just don't know about sometimes. It's challenging to get a good 3 display hub to work with. Okay. Let me change my screen here.
I was going to say, worst case is you just minimize the ribbon up top and slide the panel on the left, and you can just get the main slide a little larger.
Okay, good point. Good point.
I think it's under slideshow, the option, but there's no point in wasting time doing it.
No, now I'll play around with that on my own time. I don't want to. Okay, now I got to move my Zoom menu. All right, we're going to figure this out. Don't worry. All right, here we go. Okay, so I will share that. Now I got to move my screen here. Okay, can you see that now?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about Google Cloud. Like I said, I'm going to spend maybe 15 minutes going through some of the slides. And then what I'm going to do is walk through some of the demos that I was going to go through to show you the basic features and functions. Now, generally, a course like this is about 3.5 hours. And again, I can't cover everything, but I did want to get to questions and all that as well. All right, so generally Google Cloud is a course. Now again, typically if I was teaching a live course, this would be about 4 hours, and we go through a lot of whiteboards and demos and labs and stuff. But again, we won't have a lot of time for that. Quick introduction. Now, some of you may have seen me on LinkedIn Learning or Udemy or O'Reilly as well. I have my own platform now as well. And I do a lot of work as well with Blockchains 101 and a couple other companies as well, like INE as well. All right, so for those folks that are not familiar with Google Cloud, and you want to start learning Google Cloud, one of the first things you should do is sign up for what's called a free tier or a paid account if you want to do that as well. Now, what's nice about Google Cloud is that they provide you a three. Now, again, I should double check that because sometimes things change. But as of like 2 days ago, they offered a $300 credit as well for you to sign up and try Google Cloud. Now, that $300 credit is good for any service. And that's the thing I like about the free credits instead of the free tier, because a free tier, like in AWS, like limits you to a very specific virtual machine image. And there's like, a choice of this one or that one, and it's only one. And that, based on Linux or Ubuntu or Windows or whatever's available. So Google's pretty generous with that, I think, from what I've seen with other providers. Also, too, one of the things you should consider as well is, of course, take a course or watch some YouTube videos and learn more, and go through some of the labs that are available online. There's some great free ones. There's also paid ones with what's called basically quick labs, if you ever heard of them. So basically, in this section, I want to talk about first what Google Cloud is. And it's important to understand like the infrastructure and hierarchy. And I'm going to compare the infrastructure to AWS and then a hierarchy as well to AWS for those that are familiar with AWS to help those that are sort of familiar already with AWS so that you have something to compare against. And then we'll talk about the core services as well. There's a pricing calculator as well. And I'll also talk about how you can access GCP. There is a console, as you're likely aware. And basically, let me see the chat. Any questions? Nope. Okay. So basically, again, very straightforward. Let me just move that. That didn't sync up for some reason. That was weird. Again, that's probably my display setup. Let me just make sure. All right, silly question. Can you see the whole screen, or is it just the display, like the PowerPoint application? Do you see the whole screen?
We see essentially PowerPoint not in full screen. I mean, it's in full screen, but it's not in slideshow mode, if that's what you're asking.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what I'll do, since I'm technically challenged with PowerPoint today, I'll just minimize that and try to get that better, and I'll play with that another time. All right. So, so basically, again, what we want to consider again is to get a free tier, sign up, and learn as much as you can. So what is Google Cloud? Well, basically, Google Cloud is a service offered by Google. And as you're probably aware, Google is a very large, basically search engine and application provider. And of course, they're into like everything else, like phones and other services, data collection, and all that. So they've got all kinds of different services, but one of their services is Google Cloud. And right now, Google Cloud is the third most common provider out there. AWS has the market share, of course. Then it would be Azure, and then it would be Google Cloud. Now, a lot of that, from what I have seen, has been, of course, a result of Google Cloud sort of coming late to the game. Now, they've always had services that were in a cloud, but they weren't in, the cloud like Google Cloud. For example, App Engine is a great example of that service, which has been around literally from day one of when AWS started in about 2008 or 9. Again, just let me just hold on one second here. Okay, look like I got a comment or question here. What is this doing? This is the strangest thing today. I might just go straight to my laptop. All right, somebody is, let me just mute it. Okay, I just heard some echo or something. Okay, so basically, again, Google Cloud has every service that you probably could think of. And I'm going to go through a lot of this in the demo. We're going to talk about compute, networking, storage. Now, one of the more popular services that Google has actually is called BigQuery. And it's a massively scalable data warehouse. And it's actually pretty awesome in the way that you could work it and basically take data from basically any number of applications, from Google Analytics to Facebook Analytics, let's say, or Google Cloud Services or Excel, you name it, and you could import it into BigQuery and basically create your own queries and basically save those. So you create a data store, and then you would basically export that data to like a third party to visualize that data. Now, we also have SQL services as well, like Cloud SQL. And again, when it comes to storage, we have cloud storage as well, which would be S3, comparable. Now, also to machine learning and AI, lots of services. Now, one area that Google does really well and seems to probably have the better services in a lot of respects is going to be machine learning and AI. That's pretty much what you would read, and mainly the analysts and a lot of folks that I know that like the ML and AI prefer Google over like AWS and Azure a lot of times. Another area too, and these are just things to think about from like let's say you're a pre-sales engineer or you're an enterprise architect, and you're trying to figure out, do I use AWS or Google or Azure? Is they seem to also do really well in the area of basically identity as a service, or basically document as a service, or basically applications such as like Google Workspace. Now, Google Workspace is really popular with the small and mid-sized businesses, so you'll see a lot of that as well. And what's nice about if you're using Workspace is you have that top level domain, and then you create a life cycle, and then you can build into your cloud deployment basically a life cycle that you could set up any number of ways. So for example, when an employee leaves, that structure that you had in place for that employee on both Workspace and Google Cloud can be saved and archived or deleted or whatever you want to do. So there's a number of things. Also, too, Google is a developer-focused company, and they do really well in areas that they're able to sort of sell development as their strength as well, because Google has basically put out their industry-leading open source applications, such as Kubernetes. And again, it's one of the areas that they really do excel in. Now, Google also owns all their infrastructure, and that is something that even AWS can't say. AWS actually leases a lot of their network infrastructure. So this is, again, a big differentiator because Google has been in the data center business long before AWS, was even, a thought. So, so that's one area. So their infrastructure is really considered the industry leader, from Gartner and all that. Data analytics. Again, data services is an area that Google does really well in. Serverless. Also, too, Google has put a lot of open source content out there, and they do really well in that area. Now, the pricing's always, I call it like the the apples and oranges comparison. It all depends on what you're looking for. So Google does have really competitive pricing, just like AWS probably does, and Azure. Well, Azure has typically been more expensive from what I have seen. But again, it depends on your relationship too with the provider. If you bring to Google $1 million a month in cloud spending, you're going to have a much better price than that startup down the corner that has $2,000 a month in cloud spending. So I always tell customers and students to sort of build that relationship with the vendor, and they're able to do things that you won't be able to do online by yourself. So just realize that, build a relationship. Security is another area too that they do really well in. And that's because, again, they've had that infrastructure in place. Also, too, Google eats their own dog food, I guess, if you ever heard of that analogy. At least grandma used to tell me that. And what that basically means is basically Google uses what they sell. So BigQuery, all of these services like BigQuery, Cloud Functions, Data Store, App Engine, they were using these services, and even Kubernetes as well. They were using these services internally before they were even deployed as a public service. So Google has a lot of great benefits. Now, there's a lot of pricing structures. To be honest, I could spend 2 hours talking about pricing. I won't do it tonight, though. A lot there to look at. Now, Google supports all three of the service models. So basically infrastructure as a service, meaning that you could deploy basically your hosts with the host OS via virtual machine or deploy storage and other data services. Platform as a service, for those not familiar with these acronyms, platform as a service is where your developer can say, Joe, I want a cloud service where I can go ahead and bring my runtime over and just get up and running and not worry about the virtual machines in the background and load balancing and all that stuff that, a cloud engineer would probably deal with. So it's great for developers. Now, SaaS is basically going to be services such as, for example, a SaaS service would be like Salesforce, Workday, but in the world of Google, that's going to be Workspace, Cloud Identity, for example. And AWS doesn't really have, they've got a few newer services that are, considered SaaS, but in general, AWS is really weak in that area. Azure, of course, has Office 365 and, that ever wonderful SharePoint that all us administrators used to love. Anyways, For those that get that joke. Now, as far as like different types of services, again, I won't, I'll save the schmeal for later. One thing I've done quite a bit in the past was I trained pre-sales engineers. And one thing I always like to try to focus on is, are you able to distinguish, why the customer would want to buy your service or solution? And so sometimes if I talk like I'm a salesperson, don't think I'm trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to tell you what typically the vendor is going to probably try to tell you pretty much. All right, now, as far as Google's infrastructure, now in the world of AWS, and I know a lot of you are more than familiar with AWS, so you can understand that AWS has basically regions and then availability zones. Well, Google Cloud has pretty much the same thing. We would call it a region, and a region is what? Basically a locality where we're going to have basically zones in the world of Google, not availability zones. And basically they're going to have redundancy built in, separate power, cooling, and it's meant to provide high availability, redundancy, and also some other benefits as well. And again, they're located pretty much anywhere you would expect them to, right? And another thing too is when you compare AWS to Google Cloud, they're literally almost one for one. And basically, when it comes to regions, Google Cloud and AWS are always within one. So Google has literally built out worldwide all of these data centers in less than like 3 years or 4 years, pretty much. And other than like the 3 or 4 that they had when they first went live. So it's a massive rollout that they did. Now, Google, again, I had mentioned, owns all their infrastructure. They have data centers. Another thing that they have in this map here, for example, is they have what's called a submarine line, and they own pretty much all of these lines that you see. So the green are basically cable investments. Now, to be honest, they own them, but they share them with, the intelligence agencies, basically. That's pretty well known, so it's not a secret. One thing, when I was working in DC, I was working for about 10 years for a lot of the government integrators. And I was prior military, so I had a high level clearance as well. And there's a lot of things that you don't know that go on. But basically, there's submarine lines. They're owned and controlled pretty much by different governments, but Google is a contractor in that area. So they do own them and lay them as well. So that's important to note. The reason I'm saying that is that's a big distinguishment between other providers. AWS and Azure really can't say that, at least to my knowledge. So that's a huge deal. And that's important because Google is able to provide you the lowest latency and the highest level of service with the best support that other providers are not able to do because they're subleasing a lot of the lines, or they're using satellite, which is, well, more of a HA approach, not a primary approach, but that's another story for another day. So just be aware. And also too, there's tons of edge locations and content delivery networks. So for example, AWS has a lot of similarities in that area. So Google Cloud, for example, when we compare cloud, CDN, which is the cloud CDN, as we would call it in Google. Basically, again, it's caching. Google caches a lot of services locally at basically the edge as well. Cloud storage is one of those services. Also, too, what is that service called? My memory there. Cloud SQL, App Engine as well, I should say. So there's 4 or 5 major services that they do cache. So that's also important to know. All right, so I'm going to cover a couple more slides, and we're going to go to the demo and go to questions. So just, again, I'm almost done. I know we all love PowerPoints, but I just want to cover some of these facts or terms so that we have it clarified. All right, so again, for those that are new to the cloud, a region is basically a collection of zones. I like to call a zone basically like a sandbox of isolated resources that the provider has created for their customers that are separate from other parts of that region. So for example, for those that know AWS, they've had a rough year. AWS has had so many outages this year. And it's funny because I was teaching a class during one of them. That was a real doozy. You know, fortunately with AWS or any other provider, if they have one region down, like Northern Virginia, which is pretty common, you could always, you know, use another region, for example. But if you're a customer that hasn't like followed best practices and basically provided redundancy to at least another zone or another region, then you're down until they get you back up. So something to think about. So regions and zones are terms in Google Cloud just to be aware of. So again, regions are independent geographic regions, and Google tries to also provide the lowest latency possible. And again, everything's all fiber. They don't do copper. So we want to also consider regions and zones based on, you know, compliance requirements, costs, services available, latency. Now, here's an example of a zone layout where you could see, like in North America, there's Montreal, Northern Virginia, Iowa, Northeast. That's actually Montreal, I should say. And then Central 1 is Iowa. And then you have Charleston, South Carolina as well. And then there's also California as well, and Oregon. That's also, that's not listed there, but that's an older graphic. But again, there's quite a bit of regions as well. This is just a sample just to show you. Okay, the hierarchy. So lastly, it is important to know that the structure that Google Cloud uses is very different than what you have in AWS. Now, Google uses what's called an organization and a project effectively, and you have options between how you deploy, for example. Now, an organization in AWS is very different than in Google Cloud. So with AWS, it's not so much of a top-level domain, whereas in Google Cloud, it's a top-level domain that has full hierarchical control from the top down, or has none at all. It's up to you on how you want to set it up. And it also allows us to provide a life cycle. Now, a lot of customers may not be using Cloud Identity or you know, I keep on calling it Gmail or G Suite. So G Suite is what Workspace was called last year. And Google has actually picked up on sort of AWS's behavior. So if anyone has worked with AWS, you know that every time they have their reInvent conference, that it seems like about 10% of services are totally renamed, but everything's the same. It's just they renamed it or rebranded it. And Google does the same. So, so Workspace, again, was called G Suite. Then we have a project, and I'm going to walk through a demo with that here in a second. And again, this is a structure. It's basically very clear, very simple to understand. So basically, we also have a folder. So a folder is really an IAM structure, so that if I want to create multiple projects, I could share resources between one project to another. So a project, for those that aren't familiar with it, is basically a way we could isolate our resources. It gives us the ability to set up chargeback, really easy. And it also lets us have different quotas, different, for example, security policies, and also allows us to just basically create any levels, any different levels of basically an architecture. So it's extremely flexible. And then in that project, we would have resources such as compute, storage, etc. So again, a lot there, just checking to see if there's any questions. Nope. Okay.
Yep. Joe?
Yes.
So on the previous slide,
Yep.
So AWS, you can get different accounts
Yes.
under your organization umbrella, and within each account, you can have multiple virtual private clouds.
Yes.
How does that translate to projects and folders and resources?
Yes. Yeah. Great question. So what I'll do is I'll show you. It's probably easier to describe when I show people. So I'll do a show and tell. Does that make sense?
Sure. That's fine. I can wait.
Yeah. And basically, again, the root node is the organization node. And it's implemented very differently in the sense that you're going to have a domain name tied to that. So for example, if you want to have my company, sells widgets.com, what you're going to do, and I'm trying to think if I have a graphic in this one here. Usually I do a whiteboard, but I don't have time for that today. But basically, again, a project is a way that we isolate resources, billing, permissions. Also, too, I didn't mention services and APIs. So, for example, a great example of why we want a project is we're going to want to deploy resources for developers, for production, for QA, for compliance compliance requirements, let's say. And that project allows us that isolation immediately. There is no setup. There is no real things that we need to set up initially. It sort of works as sort of like when you deploy a bucket, that functionality to have it open to the public is off unless if you turn it on. So this is the beauty of a project. It's just remarkably simple and allows us to also peer them together. So let's say company A buys company B and they're both on Google Cloud and you want to migrate them into one environment. It's the done deal when you can peer them together pretty much. So again, there's a lot more to talk about. So what I like to do is leave the next 20 minutes or so to demos and questions, or 30 minutes or so, but I'll probably take about 20 minutes to go through some of the main services. And I will answer any questions that you have as well. So feel free, if you have any questions, pipe them in the chat or feel free to speak up. All right. So to get into Google Cloud, we have three main options. We have a console where we go to, console.cloud.google.com, and we would just log in. Now, one thing with Google, when you sign up, and for those that have not signed up, and I'm going to go to incognito because I already am logged into Google Cloud. So go to Google Cloud, free credits or tiers or whatever. It should bring you to the same page. What you want to do is go over here to free trial and free tier and select. So basically what you get is this. You get 20 free products. That's with the tier pretty much.
Sorry,
and,
Joe, you're still sharing your PowerPoint. I don't know if you're looking at a different screen.
Yep. Thanks for letting me know. Let me fix that. Okay. All right. Should be able to see that now. All right. So what you want to do is go over to the free tier. And basically, for those that haven't ran Google Cloud before, this is open to you. Now, you'll need to use your Gmail account. You'll have to sign up for a Gmail account. The one thing about Google is that everything uses Gmail. So you'll want to set up a Gmail account to sign in with Google. And you get over to get started for free. And again, you enter your email or phone that's tied to your account, and then you go log in. Now you do need to have a credit card to sign up. You do get $300 in free credits, and you get access to these services here that are listed as well. And again, right now they're the only provider that's openly given a free credits as well as a free trial. So take advantage of it if you can or want to. Okay. All right. And let me go ahead and share that again. Okay. All right, should be able to see that. Okay. All right, so let's talk about some of the major services. So the first service is going to be Compute Engine. So Compute Engine is basically, in the world of AWS, is basically going to be EC2. So that's our infrastructure as a service virtual machines. So for Compute Engine, one area too that Google actually excels in is going to be around TPUs. Because Google just has a really solid footprint in AI and ML, basically TensorFlow, if you're familiar with that, is definitely part of that group, and they support that 100%. And that was a project as well that Google created. So again, Google has that footprint. It was something that they pretty much designed and created and set it out to the open source. So what we want to do is create an instance. Now, I won't go through every possible option, but to deploy a VM is actually pretty straightforward. And one thing that I like with Google is that they automatically tell you what it's going to cost for this specific configuration and location. Now, as with any other provider, based on the region that you're going to deploy in, the cost will change. Now, in the US, they're pretty much the same. Northern Virginia tends to be about a couple cents higher, but overall, it's the same. It's just that when you deploy like in Europe or Asia, or, may the government save you if you go to Brazil. I have a story I could tell about Brazil and dealing with compliance down there, but I'm going to say that for another day. Brazil sort of looks at the US as, we're going to do to you exactly what you do to us. And they take it up another level. I travel quite a bit down to South America, and yeah, they're interesting. So compliance and the cost of the services in Brazil is so much more expensive generally. So you always want to check where you deploy for compliance. Now, to deploy a VM, there's different configs, just like, with any provider. You could pick basically, lightweight, a micro instance, or a heavyweight, more compute, more memory, whatever you want. GPUs are supported as well. So for those that, have a side hobby of trying to deploy, for example, cryptocurrencies, this, may or may not work with some of the cryptocurrencies. It won't do any good with Bitcoin. Don't waste your time, but it would be too expensive anyways. So just to be aware, you could, Monero is a good example to deploy that you could make some money on. I ran Monero for a while on my laptop and made some good money early on, but now it's still really hard to do as well. But anyways, if you're going to deploy blockchains, what you want to do is, of course, look at one of the compute optimized or GPU based type of machine configs. All right, now,
Joe, sorry,
yes.
Can I interrupt?
Yes.
Upper right, it says sustained use discount.
Ah,
When does that kick in?
excellent question. Okay, so there's actually some slides in the content that you can download that has a detailed description of the billing discounts. But basically, for example, let's compare AWS discounts to like Google. So for those that are familiar with Google, slow down. For those that are familiar with AWS, we have what's called a reserved instance. So that reserved instance basically is a reservation. Now, in the world of Google Cloud, we have basically a couple different levels of discounts. So for example, if I wanted to, I could go over here and I'll just show you where you'd find out the costs and everything, is go over to billing and then select over here what's called a commitment. Now, a commitment is exactly what it is in the world of, any kind of contract. So in AWS, if you reserved an instance for 1 or 3 years, which is the same terms in Google. You have the ability to commit to 1 year or 3 years. What's nice with Google is you don't have to prepay. You just build that amount and you get the discount automatically. So now to bring up, the question about sustained use discounts, Google has another layer of discounts called sustained. So sustained is where you're running committed use discounts. And let's say you have a bunch of different groups working together and they have different projects. What you could do is that resource is counted basically as a reserve. And as again, I always tongue twist reserved and commitments. So that committed use discount is actually escalated. What's nice is Google says, okay, for example, Mike, is, been a great user of GCP, and, his company has other groups that are in the same region and zone. And so what we're going to do is, because that commitment was only used 40% of the month, and this other instance was used 40%, we're going to automatically combine that and give Mike and his company a lower rate. That's how that works. Does that make sense?
Nice.
And it's done automatically. There's no magic on your part. So customers, if they plan it right, for example, can save an additional 20% or 30% on top of that.
Okay.
Now,
and then AWS has something called the spot market, where you can bid on unused instances at a really, really cheap rate sometimes. Does Google have anything comparable?
They do and they don't. So Google doesn't look at the world as a bazaar. So here's what we do have. Okay. I love the question. So I could tell AWS and you know what to look for in Google. So here's what we have in the world of Compute Engine. So let's deploy an instance. Now, we don't have a spot instance. What we do have is actually another type of instance where, if we go down over here, we have the ability basically to say, okay, well, maybe I want to deploy a instance that I only need for a short period of time. Now, a spot instance is usually only deployed typically a few hours or under 24 hours, right? And you would bid on that.
Blown away.
Exactly. So we have what's called an ephemeral instance. So, and we don't have to bid on it. We just say, okay, we want to use an ephemeral instance. So what we do is go down over here and basically go over to management. I think it's right here. And this ephemeral instance is actually what we would select what's called preemptibility. So if we turn it on now, here, watch the magic here. This is what I like about Google with VMs, because there's nothing hidden. Everything's in plain sight. So if I turn that on, okay, the cost of this drops by what? About 3 times, right? It's a third. So pretty good, right? And I turn it back on, the cost of that VM jumps to what? $25. So Google is saying here, this preemptible instance is basically going to last up to 24 hours. And then it can be terminated, if Google needs the resources. Now, I have seen instances terminated in like 14 hours in Northern Virginia, only because that's the busiest region of most cloud providers, and Google's no exception. But if you deploy it in Charleston or Iowa, yeah, they're going to leave you alone. Matter of fact, I've seen them last even longer sometimes, but I don't know how that would happen. But, like 24, 25 hours. And then, then they say it's time to go. So just be aware. That's how easy it is. There's no going to spot markets and putting in bids and looking to see what's available.
And is this discounted rate fixed, or does it change depending upon availability?
It changes based on a couple factors. So if you go over here to learn more, and again, it sort of, in general, it's between 60 and 91%. but
Okay.
it sort of tells you, again, it's based on what they have available. So for example, if you deploy it in Charleston or Iowa, chances are that same machine instance, for example, over here would be a greater discount. So let's just see what we have. So that's Iowa. Let's try Toronto. And now you see the cost of Toronto is actually more expensive. It's because of those truckers blocking things, I think, right?
Yeah, well, that was Ottawa, but let's not get into
exactly. Just bad joke, right? But I think there is actually protests in Toronto and Montreal,
Yeah, a little bit.
everywhere. Anyways, you get the point. So
Rowdy Canadians.
yeah, just be aware that you change the region, your cost will change. And then, also too, just this is something new that they do. So if you want to lower CO2 emissions, select, the one that says low CO2 to help the carbon footprint. So that's what that little leaf means. Now, if I select, say, Paulo, Brazil, that's $40. So it's very significantly different. And this is where I have customers sort of deal with challenges around basically cloud spend. They don't realize they might go to the US here and say, if I deploy 1,000 VMs, then here's what it's going to cost per VM, but they don't consider the region. And so that's a mistake that can happen when you deploy outside of the United States. Even Canada can run 30 to 40% more, like Montreal or Toronto. Okay, so let's deploy a VM. Now, also too, I could go over here and allow. So in the world of AWS, we have what's called a security group. Now, the security group basically here can be done either at the VM level or at the VPC level. So I go ahead and turn it on, turn it off, and I could change any number of things. Then I go over here and just go ahead and create this. Now, again, also too, one neat feature that I really like as well, while that's running, I'm going to show you. So if you scroll down over here, they have this equivalent command line and then equivalent REST. Now, unless if you get paid by the hour, the last thing you want to do is basically go in and have to put together, lines of code to basically kick off like infrastructure as code, like in the world of AWS, it's what cloud formation. In Google Cloud, we have Cloud Deployment Manager. So what I could do is go over here, go to the equivalent command line, and I just copy the exact command that I need to add to my code. And then I could go ahead and run this as well. There's also a cloud shell. So this shell is a 10 meg ephemeral instance that they boot up. There's no cost. It doesn't go against the quotas. And it allows me to deploy that VM by just, kicking it in. Now, again, this is going to use an API call, and I need to authorize this against my Google Cloud login. So again, once I do that, it'll go ahead and let me finish up. So again, so that'll work. And one thing that can't come up is, there it is. Okay. So since I was already logged in, it took it. But if you didn't log in before, or one of the things that can happen too is if you have multiple windows of Google Cloud open, it'll prompt you to enter the password again. All right, so you can see here, it deployed that VM. And I just hit something by accident. There it is. So right there, I am now still in Cloud Shell, and I could run any number of commands. For example, like gcloud, compute, and then list. And that'll go ahead and, I got to actually type the right command. Oh, I know it. I always got that backwards. Gcloud, compute, and then list. Oh, duh. Sorry. The one thing too about the command line is you'll notice too that, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Let me check. Did that come up? Oh, I got an error. That's hilarious. Oh, no way. Oh, no way. Ah, oh, so that's interesting. I don't see that error too much. So that's saying here, basically, that ephemeral instance isn't supported at this time. That's funny. Yeah, it didn't kick it, didn't want to take it. Okay. Well, anyways, sometimes that's going to happen. So what you could do is just try to get in a different region or zone. And 9 times out of 10, it works. I don't see a lot of issues with that, unless if it's in Northern Virginia. Okay. Now, another thing too about Google Cloud is when we log into Google Cloud, we have basically a worldwide view. So this worldwide view lets me deploy basically any resources. Now, with AWS, what I have to do is go up over here pretty much for a lot of the services and make sure that I'm in the right region before I deploy a resource. Now, anyone that's worked with AWS has probably deployed EC2 or deployed storage buckets, or well, actually EC2, let's say normally, in a region and zone, and you leave it on when you forget, and then you go to another region and then you look at EC2, you don't see anything deployed, and you forget about it, and then you get a bill later. I've done that at least twice because sometimes it's really easy to forget about your resources, unless if you set up a budget, for example. Now, so that's compute. All right, so how are we doing on time? All right, let's talk about storage now.
So just a quickie, Joe.
Yes.
So when you deployed this or tried to deploy this VM, you already had a project set up that was already created.
Yes. Yeah, let me talk about projects. So good point. So for example, a project, again, think of a project as like a sandbox of resources that I want to deploy for a specific organization, like a business unit, or for compliance reasons. It could be any number of reasons. Or like if you're a DevOps environment, what you might want to do, and a lot of customers will do this, is they'll set up one for development, another, and more than one typically, and then another one maybe for quality assurance or test, and then production would have its own projects. The reason is because developers will need to use certain tools that perhaps the production team may not. And we also know that typically developers and operations folks typically work for different teams. They have different managers, and we still want to have that control between the business units, even though in a DevOps environment, we have to collaborate and work together. And also mitigate security concerns. So if someone cracks, for example, a developer's password, they're only going to muck with the development team's project and not production and QA. So the project is really powerful if you set it up right. Now, for example, oh, that's funny. All right, just not my night. My mouse just died on me. The battery died. All right, so over here to create a project, and it's very simple. Go over here, create a new project. And what we can do is name this project, let's say production. And then go over here. Now, I don't have an organization set up, but if I did, I would select that organization. So for example, if I had mywidgets.com, then I could select it. And then I would go create. And that'll go ahead and create that project. And it usually takes less than a minute to do, and it's already done. So then I go back over here, refresh my screen. And now the drop-down box has that new project. Now, what's nice about this is if you check this out, for example, you'll see here billing says nothing. You'll see that there's no compute engine or anything listed. And then over here, if I go back to the Google Analytics project, you'll see here that it has a different dashboard. So it gives me a whole, and then the billing is different. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Cool.
And then do you have a dashboard that will look at the organization as a whole with all the projects combined?
Absolutely. So what I could do is go over to cloud operations, and I could set up that dashboard and basically basically, what did I mention? So Google actually renamed this a little while ago, and it was called Stackdriver. Now it's called Cloud Operations. And yeah, so basically I go over to Cloud Operations and select that. And then I could also go over here. The other thing too, there's a panel on the left side. So I'd go over here and go down to the different services. Now there's also Kubernetes engine and also a VMware engine as well. So VMware engine is another discussion for another day, just like Kubernetes, unfortunately, but very powerful tools. Now, also too, if we go down over here, we have serverless. We also have storage, and then databases, networking, and then also to integration, and then monitoring. So cloud operations is here. So this is called Stackdriver. So I go over to monitoring, and that'll bring up basically the monitoring panel where I could set up basically a dashboard. So I go over here and view all the resources. And then what's nice about this is I can create a separate dashboard for development, a separate dashboard for operations, for QA, etc., any number of ways. So that's the easiest way to get that visibility into what you're looking for. Now, also too, an important aspect of maintaining, for example, security. And so let's go to questions now. I'm going to have to wrap it up here. Got a call I'm going to have to get on in about 6 minutes or so. Yeah, anyways. Any questions? Anything I could help with? And again, make sure you download the content as well from the Dropbox. Okay, did we all learn a few new things today?
Yep, this was great. So,
yep, sure. Go ahead, Mike.
sorry, what was that Dropbox? Was that in the meetup?
Yeah, that's in the chat box. I placed it there.
Did you ever want to get into cloud computing? Becoming a cloud computing professional can lead to a career that is both financially and technically rewarding. The demand for cloud computing professionals is constantly growing, and companies are looking for these professionals in record numbers. Becoming a cloud professional does not require a college degree, and the best part is that entry-level roles are consistently available in less than 6 months of preparation. One of the best ways to get started is to get prepared with the best training and then prepare for interview with an experienced coach. Tech Commanders is here to help you go from knowing nothing about cloud to a cloud superhero. Join Tech Commanders and Cloud Interview Ace today. It will change your life.